Hello, everyone. I hope everyone is doing well. I would like to introduce myself. I am Sabreen Zahir. I hold a bachelor's degree in speech therapy, and I'm one of the senior behavior therapists at Autism Recovery Network. I have been working with ARN for the past 4 years. I would also like to welcome Mr. Omer Faruk, who is a speech language therapist at Inner Circle, Bangladesh. So today we'll be talking about maximizing speech in children at home. Aside from one-on-one therapy sessions, parents and caregivers plays an important role in a child's speech and language development. Children spend most of their time at home with their parents, and it's important to know some simple speech and language strategies, some simple tips and activities which the parents can incorporate in their daily routine activities. So, uh, the presentation outline for today is, we'll be talking about early language skills, just an introduction, and some tips for talking to your child, some communication strategies, and some activities to do at home. So the language development I would like to describe in the form of a pyramid. Okay, so the bottom part of the pyramid, you can see skills like attention and listening, which is the foundation. So in order for a child to learn and understand speech, the child should have good foundation skills like attention and listening, and then play skills, and then child starts to understand the speech and then start talking, and then speech sounds. So speech sounds is basically how clear the child's speech is, basically the clarity of the speech sounds. So we'll be just going a bit in detail. So as I said, in order for a child to learn and understand language, the child should have foundation skills or pre-language skills. So these include eye contact. So most of our kids have problem maintaining eye contact. Some has problem like visual stimming. So for all these, we'll have to work on that. And then joint attention. Joint attention means both adult and the child focus on the same object at the same time. And the next one is a desire to communicate. Most of the young kids, even before they start to talk, they start communicating non-verbally through gestures. For example, if the child wants to be carried, the child would raise their arms up. Or if they want something, they start pulling the adult, or they use pointing. So most of our kids with autism doesn't show this desire to communicate. So this is something which we have to work on as well. And the next skill is imitation. So a typically growing child, when they start to develop, they start with imitation of objects. For example, when you're playing with a child, if you shake a shaker, the child shakes it back. So it starts with imitation of objects, then imitation of actions like clap hands, wave hands, and eventually imitation of sounds and words and sentences, and turn taking, right? Even before the child starts to show turn taking in conversation, a child should develop turn taking in play skills. For example, if you roll a ball, the child rolls it back. So there is a turn taking happening over there also. So in order for a child to understand and start talking, it's important to work on these pre-language skills like eye contact, joint attention, imitation skills, play skills. Okay, so moving on, as I said, so after this pre-language skills, the child starts to understand language, which is a receptive language, and then the talking happens, which is the expressive language, and whatever language the child knows, the child uses it in a socially appropriate way, which is the pragmatic language. So under receptive language, basically it is the ability to listen and understand speech. So it includes following instructions like, for example, get apple or open door. Then understanding words. For example, a child understands correlation between the word ball and actual ball. So that is like understanding words. And then sentences, basic concepts like adjectives, shapes, colors, like big, small, clean, dirty, all the prepositions, or even the story. So overall understanding is a receptive language, and expressive language is all the talking, how we use and combine words to share thoughts, ideas, and communicate wants and needs. So this includes requesting, protesting, commenting, asking questions, answering questions. You know, whatever talking we do, it's covered under expressive language. So in order for a child to talk at sentence level, the child should have a good vocabulary. So at Autism Recovery Network, we start off with teaching the child the nouns. So we start off with very functional common objects and common people. So we have to work on these nouns first, and then once the child has a good number of nouns, we move on to action verbs like eating, drinking, playing, or you know, the adjectives as I said before, or prepositions or pronouns. So the child should have a good set of vocabulary, and then we have to see the length of sentences, whether the child is talking at one word level or you know, two word level, and whether it's age appropriate to the child. And then content of the message, whatever the child talks conveys the message, and even grammar. Some of the kids who are talking a lot makes grammar mistakes. Their sentence structure won't be correct. They make problems with the tenses, so we have to correct all those. So overall, talking about the expressive language. And under pragmatic language, it is the social language which we use in our daily routine situations. So it includes what to say, how to say, when to say, and even our body language, like when we talk, our eye contact, our social smile, or even when a kid is engaged in a conversation, does the kid take turns in conversation? Does the child stick to the topic of conversation? So all these includes in the pragmatic language, which is using the language in a socially appropriate way. Okay, so as we move on the top of the pyramid, you could see the speech sounds. So I just want to give you a rough idea about the speech sound development. So as I said, in the language pyramid, you saw like the foundation skills, which are like attention, eye contact, then play skills, and then understanding language, and then talking, and then the speech sound. So a kid with speech sound problem, they call it articulation problem. So articulation is basically how the words and how the speech sounds and words are pronounced. So here we have a speech sound development chart taken from Golden Fristow test of articulation. This is the most commonly used articulation assessment in Singapore. So I just wanted to give you a rough idea. Like over here, you can see the child's age, and this is the initial sound. That means the sound in the initial position of the word. For example, if it's the sound B, the sound in initial position like bus, bat. Okay, then in the medial position like table, bubble. So B comes in the middle position, and final position like tub, cup. Okay, so this is what the initial, medial, and final position means. So over here, you can see a 2-year-old should start to say easy sounds like ba, da, ha, ma, na, ha. Okay, so some of the parents would ask, like, my child is 3 years old and has difficulty saying sounds like sh, which are a bit more difficult. So, and that comes at around 5 years of age. So if you have a child who is 3 years old, you just have to see what the child can say according to that age, what the child is able to say, you know, what sounds the child is able to say for that age. Okay, so if the child has difficulty saying the difficult sounds like sh and all, there's nothing to worry about. Okay, so you just have to focus on the sounds according to the child's age. So over here, like 6 years, you can see sounds like R, and the blend sounds like BR for brown, glue. Okay, so this is just to give idea for the parents, like for each age there are like easy sounds, moving on from the easy sounds to the difficult sound. So most of the speech therapists start working on the articulation until the child is like 3 years. So meanwhile we have to fill the other part in the pyramid, like foundation skills, understanding, and talking. So if there is a problem with a child after 3 years, for these easy sounds, we'll have to work on that. So it all depends on the kids also. Okay, so moving on to the next slide, some tips for talking to your child. So first and foremost, speak in short phrases and sentences, which is easy to understand. This is very important. If the sentence length is long, the child would have difficulty understanding the meaning of the sentence. For example, if you say something like, bring your toothbrush so that you can brush your teeth and go to bed, the sentence length is really long. Instead, you will have to break it down into short sentences. For example, bring your toothbrush, let's brush teeth, let's get toothbrush. So speak in short sentences so that the child can understand the meaning. The next tip is stay at their eye level. So this is also important, as most of our kids have difficulty maintaining eye contact. So for some of our young kids, we will have to sit on the floor to get the eye contact. Okay, so the next tip is follow the child's lead and talk about what the child is looking at or interested. So sometimes we'll have to see what the child is interested, and we'll have to talk about what the child likes or interested in. Okay, moving on to the next one, which is commenting instead of asking questions. So especially with our young kids, when we ask so many questions, the kids doesn't know how to answer those questions. So instead, we have to comment a lot. Okay, so reduce the number of questions and comment a lot so that the child is learning the vocabulary from also the way you are commenting. For example, instead of asking, do you want to put on shoes? You can just comment, put on shoes. So just reduce the number of questions and instead comment a lot. Okay, the next step is model the word or sentence or even sign for the child if he or she doesn't know what to say. So depending on each child is different. So depending on the child's level, you model, the word or sentence or even the signs if the child has difficulty, like if the child doesn't know what to say. Okay, so the next step is repeat what the child said to approve you understood. For example, if a child requests, I want cookie. Oh, you want cookie? Here you go. So basically, you're repeating what the child said to approve that you understood. Okay. So the next step is wait or pause in between to give your child an opportunity to talk. So sometimes you will have to just wait and see, like for about like between 5 and 10 seconds to see whether the child would respond instead of prompting immediately. So just give that few seconds time and see whether the child is responding instead of immediately prompting or modeling. And the last tip is reduce background distraction by turning off the TV or music or people talking to get the child's attention. Okay, so now moving on to communication strategies. So I would like to discuss some simple communication strategies which you can apply in daily routine activities. So it includes some speech terms here and there, but it's very easy to understand. And from the term itself, you will get to know the meaning of it. So it's something simple. So the first and foremost, self-talk. So talking is really important. Kids need conversation to learn. So self-talk is basically talk about what you are doing. Okay, talk about what the adult is doing. So when you're with your child, talk about what you're doing, saying, touching, listening, feeling, or even thinking. So when you're talking, as I said before, whatever you're saying, keep it short, simple, and fun. And at this point, don't expect your child to repeat after you, because narrating gives your child exposure to language and helps child understand talking is fun and functional. Okay, here we have an example. Okay, this mom is washing the plate, and here we have the example of the self-talk. So the mom is commenting, I'm washing the plate. Now I'm drying the plate. All done. So depending on the child, you can incorporate some simple instructions or demands from your child according to the child's level. For example, you can ask, what's mama doing? Get the child answer it. Or what is this? Get the child label the plate. Or if there is a plate and a cup, get the child identify the plate, like plate, touch plate. So after the self-talk, you can slowly incorporate some demands and see how the child responds according to your child's level. Okay, moving on to the next strategy, which is parallel talk. So self-talk was about talking about what the adult is doing. So parallel talk is basically talk about what your child is doing. Okay, so talk about what your child is doing, saying, touching, listening, feeling, or even thinking. So again here, keep your language short, simple, and fun. So again, don't expect your child to repeat after you, and narrating gives your child exposure to language. So over here, we have an example. One of the tips I said before, like following the child's lead, okay? Following the child's lead and talk about what the child is looking at or interested in comes in here. So just imagine this boy this boy just took his favorite toy, which is a car, and start playing with the car. So you can just comment on what the child is doing. Oh, you have a car. It's a red car. Push the car. Vroom, the car went fast. So this will help to expand the child's vocabulary, and also the child is learning to follow instructions like push the car, okay? So this is just an example. Moving on to the third strategy, which is expansion. So as the name suggests, expansion is expanding or increasing the child's sentence length. So I have seen like parents asking me, my child can talk at one word level. How do I get my child to talk at sentence level? So as I said before, in order to talk in sentence level, the child should have a good vocabulary of nouns, action verbs, adjectives, prepositions, pronouns. So we'll have to make sure the child has good vocabulary, and then we use those words to expand the child's sentence length. So when using the expansion technique, expand your child's utterance by adding one or two words to what the child is saying. So this has to be gone step by step. So we can expand only by adding just one or two words. So here we have a more like I have put like the model how you can teach the child to talk. So if you have a child who is not talking at all, you model one word. If the child is using single words already, you expand by adding one more word and make it two words. And if the child is already combining two words, it'll be 3-word sentence. And if the child is talking at 3-word level, it will be like 4-word sentence. So on average, after children acquire their first 50 words, they start to combine single words into phrases. And sentence length should be equal to their age. Like an average 2-year-olds use 2-word utterances, and 3-year-old use 3-word utterances until they are 5 years old. Okay. So types of combinations used. So just imagine if the child is talking only at 1-word level, and that could be just the object. So here we have the different types of combinations we can use, like verb plus object, eating cookie, action plus object like kicking ball, adjective plus object like blue car, noun plus verb like mama go, preposition plus object like on the table, even carrier phrase plus object like it's a car. So what you have to make sure is the child should be able to say these words. And then if the child is able to talk or combine in 2-word combination, you can add one more word, which could be like mama eating cookie. So we are like slowly increasing the sentence length step by step. So the child should be able to name each of these words separately and individually. So before you introduce action verbs or adjectives or preposition, you will have to work on understanding and naming those separately. and then use those words in expanding the child's language. Okay, so sometimes some children may have difficulty verbally imitating phrases or sentences. If that's the case, you can use visual prompts. So there are two types of visual prompts depending on the child. So the first one could be sign language. Basically, you're signing, for example, I want eat. So this is like a visual prompt for the child to expand the sentence length. And the next could be visual approach using pictures. You can either print out pictures or draw pictures, or even for person, you can get, the picture, the real person's picture. So if there is a sentence like mama eating cookie, get a picture of mama, get a picture of eating and cookie. So that's kind of a visual prompt. The child has to point at the picture and combine the sentence, mama eating cookie. Or you can even use written words. Some of our kids are very good in reading, so you can use those written words as a visual prompt to expand the sentences. So these are the strategies in case if the child has difficulty verbally imitating the sentences. Okay, so now where and when to use expansion. There are many opportunities throughout the day. So in routine activities at the dinner table, if the child said noodle, the adult expanded hot noodles. While reading a book, the child said eating cake, the adult expanded by adding one more word, which is boy eating cake. Playtime, blow bubble, adult expanded mama blow bubble. While requesting, when the child said open, adult said open door. So these are some examples of expansion. So this is about expansion strategy, basically expanding the child from one word sentence step by step and teaching the child how to talk at sentence level. Okay, so moving on to the next strategy, which is communication temptation. As the name suggests, communication temptation, we have to tempt the child to communicate. Okay, we have to create opportunities wherein we are tempting the child to talk. So this is again for kids to teach children to talk spontaneously. So this is another question which most of the parents ask. My child can name the object when asked, but the child is not using those words spontaneously. The child is not talking anything spontaneously, though the child is able to name the words or name the objects. So using this strategy, we are teaching requesting. Okay, requesting is one of the basic skill wherein the child learns to talk spontaneously. And with this strategy, we have to find a motivating item. What is motivating for the child to talk? So usually what happens most of the time is parents knows their kids so well that they easily gives in whatever the child wants without getting the child ask for it. If the parent feels the child is thirsty, we immediately give the water. So instead what I have to say is hold back on giving the items. Don't give the items until the child asks for it. Again, this can be used for kids who are talking as well as not talking. For the kids who are not talking, you can get the child to request using signs or pictures depending on the child. So when using the strategy, you place the motivating items out of reach from your child to elicit communication. Model the child you want the child to use. So as I said, how many words should I model? So if the child is not talking at all, if the child is not talking anything spontaneously, you model one word. So this is again the expansion strategy. If the child is using 2 words already, you model 2 words. And if the child is talking at 2-word level, it'll be like 3 words and eventually 4 words. And if the child is not speaking yet, you can use pictures or signs to request an item. So going back, here we have an example. So in this example, you can see a mom and a child, and there is the favorite snack, which is cookies in a container that the child cannot open. So the child badly wants cookies, and just imagine if this boy is not talking anything spontaneously. So get the child to say cookie. Once the child say cookie, you give a small piece of cookie. So we are teaching child how to request. So since the child is not saying anything spontaneously, we started off at one word level, which is just cookie. So you prompt model the child say cookie and get the once the child says cookie, give a small piece of cookie. The reason why I'm saying small piece is in one activity itself, we get so many opportunities for the child to request. As always, practice makes perfect. So we are creating opportunities wherein, the child has to ask and then the child get the item. So when we do it like a few times, eventually the child will start to request spontaneously at word level, which is cookie. And then the child realize, oh, if I use the words, I'll get my favorite item. Okay. So in this example, this is how we would expand. Initially, we'll be working on cookie, and then once the child mastered that, we can work on I want cookie, and then I want eat cookie. Once the child is able to request at 4 to 5 word sentence, we can introduce the question form like, can I eat cookie? So we are starting from one word level and slowly expanding by adding one more word to what the child is saying. So one more thing what I wanted to tell when you teach a child requesting, don't just stick to I want all the time. Teach the child different ways of requesting. For example, once the child has mastered how to request as I want, you can teach give me cookie, like so that the child knows there are different ways of asking and not just I want all the time. Okay, so again, in the same example, we got another communication temptation, which is open. So we are purposely creating these situations wherein the child has to talk, and then only the child will get it. So we can work on open also. So this is how we would expand, like open box, help me open. Once the child is able to say in 3 to 4 words, like help me open box, we introduce the question form, which is, can you help me open box? So we are like teaching the child how to request spontaneously, and at the same time, we are working on increasing the sentence length. Okay. So here, I have got so many activities under this because I feel this is one of the concern for most parents, how to get my child to talk spontaneously. So this is another example, like we have bubbles here. Most of the kids love playing with the bubbles. So again, just imagine this, if this boy doesn't know or if this boy is not talking spontaneously, we can start at one word level by getting the child to say bubble, or if the child doesn't know how to blow, get the child say blow, or open the bubble bottle. So once the child is able to say at one word level, you can expand like open bubble or blow bubble. Once that is mastered, you can expand it to 3 words like mama blow bubble. So this is just like example. Again, when you do some activities, you blow only some bubbles, okay? Get the child ask for more. So I have some activities put here, so I'll just like to go through it so that parents can try at home. You can use wind-up toys requiring adults' help to make it work, like the spinning top. So child needs adults' help to operate those toys, as most of the kids love toys like that. And then there is tickles, peekaboo. Most of the kids, young kids love tickles. So if they want tickle, tickle, get the child say tickle. So once the child say that, you tickle the child. Swinging on the swing, you just swing a little bit, get the child say go. Once the child says that, swing more. Favorite toys up on a shelf out of reach. So child can see the toy but cannot reach. Then favorite toys in transparent jars or transparent zipper bag, which the child can see but cannot open. So the child needs to request in order to get it. So balloons, of course, the child needs adults' help to blow the balloon, so you can work on requesting. Don't provide free access to favorite items such as iPad, toy, food. Put them away, visible when possible. Like child can see the item, but child has to use the words in order to get it. Okay. Provide obstacles. For example, if a child is riding a bike, you purposely block the way. Get the child say move or excuse me. Okay, during mealtime, you can offer small piece of favorite snack. Get the child ask, request, or you can present empty bowl, cup, or plate. Let the child ask for the missing items. If the child wants to go outside the door, child has to request open door. Or if coloring is the child's favorite activity, give coloring book with nothing to color with. Get the child, ask for crayons. So just to summarize, this is the sequence of teaching requesting. We usually start off with objects like food, toys, activities, playing, eating, action, asking for help, attention by calling mama or tapping shoulders if the kid is not talking, missing items in the above example, child asks crayons to color, and even information like where is the ball. So this is like easy to difficult. So just to summarize about communication temptation, we are basically teaching the child how to request. Child has to say it, and then only the child gets the motivating item. Okay. Okay, now the next strategy is verbal routines. As the name suggests, it's something to do with the routine activity, the daily routine wherein you have to talk. Okay, so say the same routine specific phrase each time you do a given daily routine. Eventually pause and wait for the child to fill in the last word of the phrase. Okay, so you use the verbal routines every time you complete a routine activity, like for example, put on shoes or put on shirt, wash hands, get soap, brush teeth, okay, or turn off lights. So you say the same routine specific phrase every time, and eventually pause and get the child fill in the last word of the phrase, like turn on, the child has to fill in lights, or wash, child has to fill in hands. So it can be fill in ongoing actions. So in this example, dad said lights and the child said off, lights off. Or it can be fill in fun items and activities during playtime. So mom said ready, set, go. Or other activities can be peek-a, boo, or 1, 2, 3, Peppa, pig, see, so up and down. So these are some examples of fill in fun items and activities which you can incorporate during your play activities. Okay, so next strategy is give choices. Ask questions that include a choice. So most of our young kids have difficulty answering open-ended questions like WH questions. So instead of asking, what do you want? You can just give a choice, like, do you want apple or pear, as in this example, so that the child get to choose what the child wants. And even if the child is not talking yet, the child can point or gesture what the child wants. So it's always good to give choices, especially when we have young kids and who has difficulty answering the WH questions. Okay, the next strategy is withholding. Again, as the name suggests, we are withholding something, and this is for children who has several words in their vocabulary but isn't using them spontaneously or independently. So with this strategy also, we are working on requesting, wherein you intentionally wait for your child to request an item or action using a word, and then only you give that item. So we target words the child has in his or her vocabulary. So if the child wants something, and if the child uses nonverbal means like pointing or gestures, we can give indirect verbal prompts like use your words, tell me what you want, and see whether the child would respond rather than immediately prompting. So when you say, when you say your child, use your words, and if the child respond quickly using words, you immediately reinforce with whatever the child wants. If the child has trouble responding, you prompt or model the child what to say. Okay, so get the child say that word and then you give the item. So this strategy can be used anytime your child is requesting for an item or action, but just make sure the child already has that word in the child's vocabulary. Okay, moving on to the last strategy, which is recasting. So this is basically for kids who are already talking in sentences but makes mistakes like misses out details of the language, makes grammar mistakes, or even some articulation errors. So using this strategy, we are correcting the child's speech and language gently. So gently means we are doing it naturally without obstructing the flow of communication. As I said, this is for the children who are talking at sentences. So when we interrupt in between when they are talking, it would affect their flow of communication. So it's important to do it naturally. And with this strategy, the child does not have to repeat it. The whole idea is to hear the adult model and just make sure you use it frequently. So we have some examples here. So the child said, I want to read. So the adult just modeled the right way. Oh, you want to read? I want to read too. So the child missed out the details of the language, which is too. So basically, the child is the adult, the parent is just involving in a conversation in a natural way by modeling the right way of saying it. Okay, here another example, the child said he swam fast and the adult said he did, he swam fast. So adult just responded saying the correct way of saying it. I made yellow leaf in the next example. So yellow, the child made an articulation error. So the adult model, you made the yellow leaf, did you? So we are correcting in a natural way, you know, just it looks like both the adult and the child is in a natural way of communicating. So in case if the child makes mistakes like misses out details of the language or grammar mistake, you model the right way of saying it. Let the child hear what you're saying. So from hearing, the child will eventually learn how to say it correctly. And now, moving on to the last one in the strategy. So this is specifically for the child who is nonverbal. So if the child is nonverbal and is only making sounds spontaneously, so we have kids who are not talking but would make sounds spontaneously and sometimes very rarely. So when a child starts to make sounds spontaneously, you immediately imitate the sound the child is making. So this is very important. Whatever sound the child is saying, you just imitate the sound, you know, what the child is making. So this results in a back and forth interaction. So what happens is the child says a sound spontaneously, and then you imitate it, and the child would start to imitate it back. So this results in a back and forth interaction, which motivates the child and help him pay attention. So in my experience, I have seen children, like when I imitate it back, the child would start to pay attention, the child would start to watch our oral movements, how the mouth movements, how we are producing the sound, okay? So if the child produces the same sound after you, you immediately reinforce. So after the child is consistently imitating back and forth, add in say as part of your instruction, you know, like say, something like that. Some children respond well to tactile or visual prompting. So tactile means touch cues, wherein therapist uses their fingers and provide the touch cues for each sound. So in speech therapy, there is an approach called prompt approach. It's all capital letter PROMPT. So using this approach, the therapist uses therapist fingers as a cue to teach each sound. For example, most of the nonverbal sounds, most of the nonverbal kids starts with vowel sounds like E, O, U. So using the tactile cues, we give the tactile cue for each sound. Basically, the therapist will place the therapist's fingers on the child's, near the child's oral motor area. For example, like E, O, U. So we are providing the tactile cues for the child to say each sound, like for ooh, like this. So what happens with the nonverbal kids is, since they are not talking, they don't know how to move their lips or tongue or jaw. When we are talking, there is this, rapid movement of tongue, lips, or jaws. So these kids, since they are not talking, they don't know how to move their lips or tongue. So we have to teach them how to move all these articulators. We have to teach them how to move lips or tongue or jaws. So at ARN, under the guidance of a speech therapist, we use talk tools. For example, in order for the child to say the vowel sound oo, there should be good lip rounding. So using the talk tools, we work on the blowing strategies like blowing, horns, kazoo, or bubble to work on the lip rounding. Ooh. So, so this is just an example. So we have to work on the tongue movement so that the child can make different sounds. For example, the sounds like la, na, and all, the tongue has to go up. So we have to work on the, the tongue movements or the lip movements in order for the child to say that sound. Okay, so the next step is associate the learned sound with an item or activity. This is very important. Whatever sound the child learns, immediately pair it with an item or activity that is functional. The reason why is the child will know the function of communication. It's okay if it's just one single sound. It's perfectly fine. Get the child use that just the sound to communicate. So among my kids, if the child learns how to say E, I immediately pair it with eat. If the child wants to eat something, get the child say eat. Okay, and then gives the child's favorite snack. Or if the child knows how to say oh, pair it with open. Okay, whenever the child wants to go out, I get the child request for open by getting the child to say oh. So another thing what I wanted to mention at this time is when I work with my kids who cannot talk, I mostly use sign language. It is a great way wherein, child learns the language. So when we use sign language, we are talking at the same time. So the signs is like a visual prompt for the child to talk. So in the above example, when I said, I'll get the child say eat or O for open, I'll be signing at the same time like eat or open so that the child pays attention. So this is like a visual cue for the child to say the sound. So I always pair with the signs for kids who are not talking. So once the child can consistently produce the individual sound, combine the sounds in different combinations. Like once the child learns a consonant and a vowel, you combine in consonant vowel combination. For example, if a child is able to say sound and sound, we work on combination, which is ma. So initially, therapists might have to use the tactile cues like ma by getting the child say ma and eventually fade away the tactile cues. So once ma is good, we work on mama, and once mama is good, we associate with mom's picture. So, this is how we expand from just this one sound to different combinations. Okay, so you can do like consonant vowel combination, even vowel combination. For example, if the child is able to say oo and ah, so when you say it together, it'll be like ooah, wah. Okay, once a child is able to say wah, pair it with water, wah for water, which is a functional thing. Whenever the child wants water, I'll get the child to say wah and sign. It'll be good if the child, you use the signs also, so that the child can say wah for water. So it's perfectly fine even if the child is using just one sound. Let the child know the function of communication. So these are some of the things which you can do with the nonverbal kid and get the child to imitate the sounds. And one more thing, what I would do is with my nonverbal kids, I pair it with, I work on fill-in songs also. Whatever sounds the child can say, I get the child to fill in the songs. For example, in the song Old MacDonald Had a Farm, I'll get the child imitate e, ah, o, which is all vowels. So the songs help to build on the joint attention. The child will pay more attention. The songs will help for remembering the sound also. So with this song, we are working on e, ah, o. Eventually, the child will start to fill in. You can work on oo for the animal sound moo, cow says moo. So depending on the child and what sounds the child have, you can get the child fill in songs using those sounds. Okay, so here we have a video. So I'll just play that.
We teach them signs or sign language as a form of communication. The therapist teaches them the sign for an item or activity while simultaneously saying the word.
Eat. Yes, what do you want? Good job.
So in this video, since the child cannot say eat fully, so we are just getting the child say E, and you can see the therapist signing at the same time, so which is like a visual prompt also. So it's always good to use sign language when you work with the kids. So
we teach them signs or sign language.
Let's move on to
Here our therapist, Ms. Rowena, is teaching this little girl how to mend. For her age, she's not very verbal, so she's first being taught to make sounds to mend. First, Ms. Rowena will ask the girl to choose between a bottle of bubbles or a baby bite snack, both of which are things that the girl likes. The girl grabs the bottle of bubbles.
Oops, sorry, just moving on. Just hold on.
Here our therapist, Ms. Rowena, is teaching this little girl how to mend. For her age, she's not very verbal, so she's first being taught to make sounds to mend. First, Ms. Rowena will ask the girl to choose between a bottle of bubbles or a baby bite snack, both of which are things that the girl likes. The girl grabs the bottle of bubbles, and then Ms. Rowena will teach her to mend for.
So here you can see the therapist is giving the choices. Since the child cannot answer or choose, so the choice helped the child to choose what the child wanted. And you can see the therapist is sitting on the floor to get the child's eye level.
At the start of man training, we reinforce close approximations of the word. So Ms. Rowena will provide the verbal stimuli "buh," which the girl will learn to imitate, and then she will learn to say "buh" to inform others that she wants to play with bubbles. Ba. Ba. Say it. Ba. Yay! Good girl!
So yeah, so the child said ba, which is just the initial sound of the word, and the therapist reinforced what she wanted. Okay, here we have another video. So when this boy started, he was not able to imitate any sounds upon instruction, and he rarely made any sounds. So here is his therapist working on with him now.
Good. Let's say E. Good. Let's say O. Nice one. Okay, one more. Let's say mama. 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 Good. Okay, one more. Come. Let's say mama. Good. Mama. Yeah, much better. Good job.
So the reason why the therapist asked the child to repeat again was because the therapist was asking him to say mama, and the child was saying mama, which is not correct. So we wanted the right one. So that's why the therapist was getting the child to say it again. Okay. So moving on to the next one, which is activities to do at home. So this will be covered by Mr. Omer Faruk, who is a speech language therapist at Inner Circle, Bangladesh.
Thanks, Sabreen. Hello, everyone. You have already learned about so many communication strategies. In this section, I'm going to talk about different activities while incorporate them throughout each day. Remember, the practice really does make perfect. So the more you practice using all of these strategies, the more comfortable and the effective you will become. There are many wonderful activities that promote talking and conversation with your child that can be done in and around the home. The opportunity are truly endless. Here are few fun ideas to help you get started. Sabreen, can you move on to the next slide?
Sure. Yeah.
Next slide,
Yeah.
please.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And then the first activities is books. Books are excellent ways to engage your child in an enriched language experience. For young children, books with lot of colorful pictures, fewer words, repetitive words or phrase, talk about the picture or say the story in a simple way and fun way. Get the child to point and name the items, ask questions based on the kid's level, and follow instruction like open book and turn the page, etc. etc. Next page, please. And then nursery games. Nursery games are great to encourage in speech and language skills at home. Songs and rhymes that have repetitive words and phrases like Johnny Johnny yes papa, Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, or Rain Rain Go Away. That excellent and typically easier for children to learn. The that excellent and typically easier to children for learn. They offer lots of opportunity for children to learn specific sounds, words, phrase. They have over and over they hear over and over again. Sing simple rhymes to the child and includes actions with the song as well. While singing, pause and get the child to fill in a word from the song. And once mastered, move on to 2 and 3 words from songs. And then number three, puzzles that are variety of games and puzzles available for children with all ages. Any game any game or puzzles can work well for encouraging your child's speech and language skills. Incorporate communication strategies while fixing puzzle. You can use so many puzzle, for example, farm animal puzzle, food puzzle, nationality puzzle, transportation puzzle, etc. etc. And then cooking activities. Cooking activities are excellent for supporting a child's speech and language development. It helps to leveling the items, actions, adjectives, following direction, sequencing, and requesting. Incorporate communication strategies we discussed while doing a cooking activity, for example, baking cookies. On the other hand, if your child have articulation difficulties and may have difficulty in sound production, such as your child have making the sound with boss sound. While baking, you might use lots of words that start with ba sound. You might say to your child, let's take the brownie out of the box. Or, oh, it's time to bake the brownie. By trying this cooking task to your child, speech and language, you have created a fun, motivating, and effective communication activity. And finally, I Spy. I Spy is a classic game that requires limited supplies. Just you and your child and a safe place to spy. Looking at the room, take turns and talk about you and your child sees using I Spy first. With this game, first of all, you have to choose a object or anything else around the room. Then you can say to your child, with my little eyes, I spy red ball. And then your child will move around the room and observe the room, and he or she will find out the what you just said, the red ball. And then he says, this is the red ball. And by this game, we can work on vocabulary building, articulation, noun function, category, and increasing length of utterance. For example, I spy a dog barking. I spy something green. I spy something that is white. I spy something that is fruit, and etc. etc. And here is some play activity that you can play with your child, like pretend play. Pretend play, it helps to your child's expand language and develop imitation, turn taking, and creativity. Over here we have mentioned so many examples like cooking set, supermarket shopping, doctor set, farm set, telephone talking, teddy or doll tea set, doll's house, doll or baby play, dressing up. And here is sensory play. And sensory play, some children might have sensory issues. By the sensory play you can explore sensory expression, or talking about the objects, action and color and different type of textures, and etc etc. Over here we have mentioned some of examples of sensory play. And there is shaving cream. By this shaving cream you can make sensory play with your child's body parts, like nose, hands, arms, and jelly, play-doh, slime, and pasta, finger painting, water play, and sand play. And last of all, manipulative play. Manipulative play, it helps to child language development and fine motor skills, spatial awareness, and problem solving skills. By this manipulative play you can do so many with so many things. Over here we have mentioned some of examples, like you can do with a child manipulative by puzzles from box, pegs, and lacing beads, and building blocks. And right now we are showing a video for the activities.
Here we have two children playing Zingo. Whenever a student needs to interact with others for a game to advance, such as calling out the number of a bingo ball, the therapist will prompt by providing them what they need to say.
Fiona, say G48. G48.
G48. Check. G48.
To teach them turn-taking, the children are instructed and reminded to wait for their turn to play. Those who know how to play the game are supervised. They're only prompted when required, such as when they forget whose turn it is to play.
Whose turn now? Whose turn to play now? See, Fiona finished just now, right? Okay, now it's... That's right.
Yeah, so in this video, the kids were like engaging in a turn-taking activity, which was playing Zingo. So we were like prompting the child to say like, my turn. So according to the game, we were like prompting the child how to engage appropriately, like saying my turn, your turn, just commenting while playing the game. So it was just the video about that.
Here we have...
Now let's move on to question and comment. So we are done with the presentation. So let's see the question and answer section. So here we have one question. Okay, when using wait. when using communication temptation, how do you avoid it leading to frustration or tantrum for the child? Okay, so okay, with this, the first and foremost, we really have to find what is motivating for the child. So get the child. Okay, we can start with, if the child has problem talking, we can at first get the child use a non-verbal way of requesting. If the child is showing a lot of tantrums, like just get the child touch the item. The moment the child touches it, you reinforce, so that way we can avoid the tantrums. Child will understand that the child will understand, even if it's the child will learn there is an easy way to communicate, like just pointing to the item, and then the child will get it. So you can just lower down your way of requesting, either by just pointing it or touching, and eventually getting the child to say it. Okay, and choose what the child really wants it. So at the start, if the child is not saying and showing tantrums, get the child at least to point it, and you give the child what the child wants. Okay. Okay, here we have another question. How does sensory play helps our kids? Sensory play, in the above example that Omer gave, there is, for example, there is one with the jelly. Okay, so you can make it a bit fun for the child, like the working on objects. So you can hide those small objects inside the jelly, get the child explore it and make it in a fun way. So if you are hiding the objects in the jelly, you take it out and get the child name it. So this is kind of like a fun way, a different way of teaching. Rather than tabletop activities, you can engage in this fun play wherein you're hiding. So the things we hide in that are the things we working on objects, so something like that. Or with the shaving cream, you can work on letters, numbers, you can just draw it. Or again, in the shaving cream, like we can hide something, we can work on instructions like put in. So we are engaging the child by talking when we do these play activities. So there are different sensory play, even with the Play-Doh. With the Play-Doh, you can we can say the actions like, let's roll the Play-Doh. So the child will understand, roll means that. And we can make creative stuffs with the Play-Doh, like ball, make it fun for the child. Or another sensory play examples was lentil or pasta. We can teach actions like, scoop or pour. Again, we can hide some objects inside the sensory play, inside the pasta or lentil, get the child feel it, take out and name it. It can be like letters, numbers. So yeah, so these are some ways how we can play sensory game. So just incorporate the communication strategies we discussed, like especially talk about what you and what your child is doing, comment what the child is doing, describe about the actions, label the things when you engage with the sensory play activities. Okay. Omer, do you want to answer some questions?
Yeah, here is how can I encourage to a 3 to 4 year child to talk in social setting, like with friends or in school. In this case, you can play with different kind of activity, as I said, cooking activities or I spy activities. This kind of activities, by playing this kind of activities with your child, you can encourage your child 3 to 4 words or conversation level communication tent. So if your child, as you said, your child have 3 to 4 word child to talk in social settings, you can more engage to your child in social settings. You can more engage your child to unknown people in different context. Maybe it will help to your child to communicate 3 to 4 words.
Okay, so here we have another question. How to help in answering simple questions. Okay, so you can start off with choice questions like, do you want cookie or apple? So you can work on that first. And when you teach WH questions, we start off with what question. So we can either do things like, make it a bit fun, like in a bag, you put the things that the child knows and child doesn't know. Okay, so when the child takes out from the bag, let the child name the items the child knows. And if the child doesn't know how to say it, get the child ask, what's this? So that the child will understand, if the child doesn't know something, child has to ask, what's this? So this is one activity. Okay, like a fun game, mix the things that the child knows and doesn't know. And then whatever item the child doesn't know, get the child ask, what's this? Another thing what I do with answering questions is I get the child learn the association, like what is for object, where is for place, who is for person. So for example, if I'm working on what and who question, I'll get a set of pictures with objects and people. Okay, and so there will be what and who. I'll get the child sort. Okay, if the child takes a picture of boy, sort under who, so that the child will know who is for person. If the picture is of an item, sort under what. So the child will know, get the association between what is for object and who is for person. And sometimes you can make it in a fun way by pretend playing. You be the student and let the child be teacher. Okay, so the child pretend as the teacher and get the child ask questions. So you can make it in a different fun way. So usually you can start off with choice questions and then what questions by getting the child label the things he doesn't know, and if he doesn't know something, ask what's this. Or you can do the sorting game, like learning the association, what is for object, where is for place, who is for person. Or you can even play some games like, as I said, the teacher and the student, let the child be a teacher and ask you questions. So these are the different ways you can do it. So it's better to start off with choice questions and then what question, and then you can do some sorting. Okay, and you can use the visual prompts also. So okay, so here we have another question. When using recasting, how do you know that the child understood the right way to say the sentence if you are not repeating the word? So this is just a strategy to use it in a natural way. This is not like like a tabletop or such activity. And I have said before, recasting is basically for kids who are talking in sentences and makes like mistakes, like misses out the details or grammar mistake. So when this happens in a conversation, that's when we use like recasting. We teach it in a natural way without obstructing the child's flow of communication. So otherwise, we can teach separately. For example, if the child makes grammar mistakes, we can work on grammar separately. So recasting is basically when it happens in a natural conversation. So we cannot interrupt the child in between or make the child say, what you said was not right. So the child has to be confident. And the idea of this recasting is best to hear the adult model of saying it. So if there is like very bad articulation problem or grammar problem, we'll have to work separately. on that. Okay, using picture cards and all this will have to work separately. Okay.
Okay, we have another question. He uses some words on his own like Nana, Papa, but when we ask him to say or bring Papa in front of him and ask him to say Papa, he doesn't say it. How can I work on it, and how can I make him realize what he is saying and what it refers to? In this case, your child just say Nana, Papa, and not frequently. I think he have some oral motor issue. If you work on his oral motor issue first, and then different type of speech sounds, work with different type of speech sounds and words. But first of all, you have to work with on his oral motor issues. If you work on his oral motor issues, maybe he will after reducing some oral motor issues, he will say so many words like Nana, Papa, and different type of words frequently.
Okay, so yeah, that's it, right? Yeah, so here we have another question. How PECs help totally know words kid? So if a child is non-verbal, the type of, we call it AAC, alternative and augmentative form of communication. So PECs, signs, all comes under this AAC. So if a kid is not talking, which type of AAC, which way of nonverbal means of communication you choose, all depends on the kid. If you have a kid and has difficulty identifying pictures or objects, problem in discriminating pictures, then text will be a bit difficult for that child. If the child is having a problem with, discriminating pictures, it all depends on the kid, what type of non-verbal means of communication you choose. If the child is good in imitating the actions, you can go for the signs. So the question, how PECs help totally know words kid, if the child is able to discriminate the pictures, the child will communicate by exchanging the pictures. If the child wants, for example, the basic requesting, the child will pass the picture and then the child get the item. Okay, so but the basic idea is the child should be able to understand the picture and discriminate between two pictures. Okay, yeah, I hope I answered that. Okay, the next question. Okay, there is another question. Can we teach our kids everything with social stories? Again, it depends on the kids' understanding. So we use social stories for the kids whose understanding and language is pretty good. Like the child should understand what is said. So if your kid, so if you read a story and if the child can understand, then you can teach some of the things with social stories. So again, it depends on the child's understanding level, whether you can introduce social stories or not. Okay, so the child has to understand whatever message is conveyed in the social story. Okay, that's it. Okay, here we have another question. If your child is getting stuck with verbal routine, how do you move away from it? Okay, I can't understand what stuck means, but you practice the verbal routine every day. You say the same routine specific phrase every day, and you can prompt the child. So it all depends on the child's level. Each kid is different. For example, there is the routine activity is wash hands or get soap. Okay, so you just fill get, and in order to fill in soap, you can give the visual prompt like by touching the soap. So you can use different kinds of prompt for the child to fill in the last word, either by touching the item, or if the child is verbal, you can prompt by saying the initial sound of the word, which is a verbal prompt. So you can use different kinds of prompts for the child to fill in the last word when we use this verbal routine. So I hope that helps. So just try doing different kinds of prompts, like verbal prompts by saying the initial sound of the word, or gestural prompts by touching the item, so that the child knows the child is supposed to say that. Okay, I hope that helps. Okay, we have another question. Can you explain further how manipulative play works? So manipulative play is basically activities like building blocks or shape sorter or the lacing beads. So these are some of the examples. So even a simple shape sorter, when we get the child to do a shape sorter, we have to talk. The strategies we discussed before, like self-talk, parallel talk, all comes here. So when we get the child to put in shapes, we are talking at the same time, circle, put in circle. So the child will learn the word circle, understand the vocabulary like put in circle. So it all depends on the child's level. If the child already knows it, we can expand more. You can say the color of the circle, it's a blue circle, so you can expand. So it all depends on the kid's level. So if the child is talking at just one word level, it start off with just one word, and eventually we can expand while doing this activity, or while doing building blocks. You can talk about the colors, or you can just engage in talk what you're doing. Oh, let's build a tower. The block goes up, the tower is going up. If the tower breaks, the tower fell down. So we are talking at the same time. So the child is still hearing from us, which will help for the following instruction and learn new words, and other activities like lacing beads. It helps for the child's fine motor, and at the same time we are naming the colors. So these are some of the examples. So whatever activities we are doing, it's important to talk, especially the self-talk and parallel talk, and comment what the child is doing in simple language, so that the child will learn new words and helps to learn, helps to follow the instructions. Okay, here there is another question. My child is able to identify items and use nouns. How should we progress thereafter? Would verbs, adjectives, or pronouns be next in priority to work on? Okay, so according to this, the child is able to identify, I believe it's the common functional nouns. So you can try getting the child to use these nouns while requesting. Okay, so with these nouns, whenever the child wants something, get the child use it spontaneously, and then you can work on action verbs. Okay, so action verbs like eating, drinking, playing, and then once you have a good number of action verbs, and it's important that the child should be able to generalize. So some children would be able to name the action verbs from the picture cards, but the ongoing actions, so they might have problem. It all depends on the kids. So it's important to know that you work on generalizing both in pictures as well as ongoing actions, and then you can move on to adjectives. like shapes, colors, big, small, long, short, all the different adjectives. Once a child has good number of adjectives, you can move on to prepositions and pronouns. So yeah, so this is the step how to do it. And at the same time, depending on the child, you can work on expanding the child's sentence length also. Okay, I hope that is answered. Okay, so here we have another question. The child can say the name of the object spontaneously, but when we ask what's this, she doesn't respond to the question. How can we help? So that means, okay, I have seen many young kids, especially when the child, I have a kid who's like 2 years old, and the child would say, would name the object spontaneously, but when asked what's this, the child may not respond. Okay, or even when we ask him to say or imitate the words, the child may not respond. So if that's the case, the thing is the child didn't understand the idea that when we ask the child to imitate something, the child has to imitate. So the child doesn't understand the idea yet. When asked to say something, the child is supposed to answer it. So if this is the case, you'll have to go back to the foundation skills I explained in the pyramid, like the pre-language skills. We'll have to work on attention, we'll have to work on imitation, okay, especially imitation with the objects. So let's lower down, let's start with imitation of objects, okay. For example, something like shaker or wipe tissue, let the child imitate after you, or even imitation of actions like clap hands, see whether the child is following that. So and eventually imitate sounds and words. So I would say you will have to work on imitation skills, like imitation with the objects and motor actions, and then even the visual performance tasks like matching activities will also help, so that the child will understand the idea that if we ask the child to do something, the child has to do it. So I feel that's the reason when we ask the child to say something, the child is not saying because the child didn't understand the idea that he needs to do it. So let's just lower it down, work on simple imitation skills like actions, imitation of imitation with the objects, and see whether the child is able to do it, even matching skills, matching object to object, so that the child will get the idea that if we say something, the child has to do it. And then you can engage in fun play activities with the child. So you note down the words that the child is saying spontaneously. Make a list of words the child is saying spontaneously. Get those objects and engage in a fun play. Like, even something like sensory play, hiding those objects, taking out and you labeling it, and see whether the child would label it, would name it back. So you do these imitation skills, imitation activities, take note of the words that child is saying spontaneously, and in a fun play, you engage in a play activity wherein you label those items and see whether the child would immediately say it back, and reinforce whenever the child says it. Okay, I hope that's answered.
Okay. The last question was her child cannot talk with the school environment. As you said, your child can talk with you, but he doesn't talk in communicate at school or with his friends. In this case, you can do your child or engage your child to the new friends or making friends with others who are very new with your to your child, and you just help to your child to make friends, and then let him go to communicate with the anonymous people or unfamiliar people every day. It happens due to his shyness actually, and if you do it daily in daily basis, I think it will help your child to communicate with the other people. I hope you will get it.
So yeah, so I'm just looking at the questions. Okay. There was a question on the difference between sign language, text, and prompt. Okay, so I have just mentioned about prompt in my slide before. So prompt is basically using the tactile cues for the specific speech sounds. So in order to teach the child to say the sounds, we are giving like tactile cues. So teaching the sound production is the prompt approach, wherein the therapist gives the tactile cues, and text is picture exchange communication system, wherein the child communicates by exchanging the pictures. And another thing is Hanen. Hanen is basically the strategies I have discussed before. So Hanen approach mostly involves the strategies which I discussed. So when we do therapy, we have to use like a combination of Hanen and even when we work with nonverbal kids, we have to use a combination of prompt approach as well as or talk tools by oral placement therapy. So yeah, so this is what it is. So PEX is picture exchange communication system. Hanen includes most of the strategies we discussed under strategies, and prompt is basically for the speech sound production, wherein therapist gives the tactile cues. Okay. There is another question, any good social stories to share? It depends on the child and what problem the child has. So in my experience, I had a kid who had a problem like talking to strangers. So we made a social stories for that. Or for picky eaters, we can make a social story for that. Or one of my kid had problem like touching the private part, so I made a social story for that. But it all depends on whether the child would understand what is conveyed in the story. So we can, as I said before, we can introduce social stories depending on the child's level. Okay, the child should understand. Okay, so here we have another question. My child has started repeating the questions we ask him and answering it on his own instead of just telling us what he wants. For example, my child would say, "Are you finished eating?" Yes, instead of saying, "I'm finished eating." Why does he do that, and how do we get him to stop that? So, basically, the child is repeating what the adult said. It's because I don't know whether the child, I'm not sure whether the child repeats everything. So some kids so in this case, I'm not sure whether the child repeats whatever is heard or does the child repeat it after some time. In some kids with autism, there is this echolalia wherein the child would repeat what is heard. So one reason could be the child doesn't understand the question, what is being asked. So for example, if you ask, do you want tissue? The child would just repeat it back, do you want tissue? It's because the child has not understood. Or in this example, child would say, the child would repeat the question and then say yes. Okay, so I would suggest is prompt immediately how to answer it. So you can use the visual prompts. For example, this is the sign for yes. Okay, so when you ask the question, are you finished eating? You can just give a visual prompt and get the child say yes. Okay, prompt immediately so that the child knows this is the correct way of answering it. So you can use the visual prompts either by signs or some pictures, writing like yes. So just associate with the visual prompt and then immediately prompt the child to say the right answer before the child repeats it. So the next time when you ask a question, get the child to say it immediately, okay? And you can use the visual cues also, like nodding head for yes, or some pictures as a visual cues. Okay, so in the same, like for this, I would like to say you can even give like different forms. I don't know whether it's only for asking questions, only when the question is being asked. So you can even give like choice questions and get the child to choose immediately so that the child won't repeat the question. Okay, so basically, I don't know in this case whether it's really echolalia. So basically, the child tends to repeat what is heard. If that's the case.
Another question is, my child can say numbers and letters but can't say meaningful words. How can make my child talk meaningful words? Okay. In this case, first of all, your child need to figure out that his oral motor issue or his articulators or oral motor skills. If your child can imitate so many oral motor skills such as puffing cheeks, lip seal, lip spread, pucker, this kind of oral motor skills, if your child can do, I think then your child can sound or meaningful word can produce properly. And that's why you first of all I think your child need oral placement therapy, and after oral placement therapy your child may have different kind of speech sound imitation, and then different kind of words of imitation, and this will help you to your child meaningfully conversation or communicate. I hope you get it.
Okay, here we have another question. How to teach children can answer with 2 or more responses. For example, knife for cutting and peeling. So is it, from this question, is it, what I understood is like to teach the function of the object? So we can even at Autism Recovery Network also, like we work on teaching like the function, feature, class, and all these things. So when you teach the function of an item, you can start off with sorting. Basically, you're teaching the function of each. For example, knife is for cutting or cup is for drinking. So you can first get the child to sort, like put with something that you cut or put with something that you drink, and get the child to understand, get the child to receptively identify. For example, if you place a picture or object of knife or a cup, give me something that you drink, or give me something that you cut, and eventually moving on to naming, like which is tell me something that you cut. Okay, and then talking in the absence of pictures, like what can you tell me some things that you cut with, or can you tell me some things that you drink? So I hope this is the question, because in the example it's like knife for cutting and peeling. So what I understood is the function. So you can start off with sorting, or matching, get the child to match, and then like receptively identify, give me something that you cut with, or give me something that you drink, and ask the child, can you name me something that you drink? Like you can do with the pictures, you can get the pictures of the objects, pictures of the items, and then eventually tell me something that you cut with, or tell me something that you drink. So you can, this is one way to teach the functions. Okay, and slowly you can include more. So you can even do object actions, like for example, you can start off with object imitation. With the knife, you imitate cutting, you imitate peeling, and get the child do the same also, so that the child will understand. With the cutting, with the knife, you can cut and peel. So you can do that way also, and eventually you can work on functions by, as I said, by matching, identifying, naming, and talk in the absence of the items. Okay, I hope that's clear. We have two more questions. So this one is how to reduce that about obsession in something like spinning, like fan, car wheel. Okay, so so I don't know whether the kid is talking or not talking. So you can try to teach kid other ways wherein he likes it. For example, if the child gets a car and all he does is spinning the car wheel, you can show other good playing behaviors, like let's push the car, vroom, ready, set, go. See whether the child is imitating that pushing the car. Okay, so when a child is engaged in doing something, just model him like appropriate way of playing with it, and see whether the child would follow you and imitate it. Okay, so this is a good way, like model the correct way of playing with it rather than letting the child spin with the car or the wheel all the time. Okay. And the last question, my kid has problem in transition activities. How to work at home and school? So we have to see what is the child's reinforcer. Okay, what motivates the child the most, and whenever the child does something, reinforce immediately. So depending on the child's working tolerance, you reinforce. If the child is able to work only for a short time, the moment he is done with an activity, reinforce. So reinforcement is one main thing wherein you can get the child to engage in activities. And the next question is, my child makes silly voices. I don't know what kind of silly voice, and I don't know the purpose. If it's for attention, if the function of behavior is for attention, you will have to ignore her. Okay, or if the child can talk, so in this case I don't know whether the child is talking. If the child can talk, replace it with good way of talking. Okay, good way of saying it rather than the silly voice. Okay, so you can replace it with a proper way to talk. So I hope that's cleared. Okay, so I think that's the end of questions. So if you have additional questions or need any additional information, so this is our contact details. So on top, it's the Autism Recovery Network contact details. You can, contact us via phone or email or even Facebook. And below is the inner circle details. Okay. So please feel free to contact us if you have more doubts, or if you wanted to know any other information, please feel free to contact us. Okay, so that's it. Thank you.